I watched my daughter-in-law's lips curl into that smirk I'd seen too many times before. The kind that said she owned the room, owned my son, owned the narrative. Serena leaned back in her chair at my dining table, the one I'd saved for 6 months to buy, and let those words fall from her mouth like poison. "You're not even half the woman my mother is." The air went thick. I could hear the tick of the wall clock, the hum of the refrigerator in the next room, even the soft scrape of my son Aaron's fork against his plate as he suddenly stopped eating. He didn't defend me. Didn't even look up. Just sat there, frozen, like a child caught between two angry parents. That's when something inside me finally snapped. Not in a loud way. Not in a dramatic way. But in the quiet, deliberate way that a door clicks shut and locks from the inside. I slowly pushed my chair back. The legs scraped against the hardwood floor, and the sound seemed to echo through the whole house. I folded my hands on the table, looked Serena dead in the eye, and let my voice stay calm and steady. "Then maybe she can start paying your rent." The color drained from Aaron's face so fast I thought he might pass out right there at the table. His fork clattered against his plate, bouncing once before settling crooked on the edge. He stammered, his voice cracking like a teenager's. "Rent? What rent?" Serena's smirk faltered. Just for a second. Just long enough for me to see the crack in her armor. She glanced at Aaron, then back at me, her eyes narrowing like she was trying to figure out what game I was playing. But I wasn't playing. Not anymore. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family, enjoy the story. See, what my son and his wife didn't know was that I'd been keeping track. Every wire transfer. Every check I'd written. Every time I'd covered their mortgage when Aaron's paycheck came up short. Every emergency that somehow always landed on my doorstep with a price tag attached. I had it all. Dates, amounts, bank statements, signed agreements. A whole decade of financial lifelines, quietly documented and tucked away in a lockbox behind my recipe books. I'd told myself for years that I was helping. That's what mothers do, right? They sacrifice. They give. They prop up their children even when those children are grown adults with families of their own. I'd convinced myself that love meant never asking for acknowledgement, never demanding respect, never keeping score. But sitting there, watching Serena's face twist with confusion and Aaron's pale with panic, I realized something that should have been obvious years ago. They weren't just taking my help. They were taking my dignity, my identity, my very existence as anything more than a checkbook with a pulse. "I don't understand," Aaron said, his voice barely above a whisper. His hands were shaking now, fingers gripping the edge of the table like he needed something solid to hold on to. "You don't understand," I repeated, letting the words hang in the air. "That's the problem, isn't it? You've never understood." Serena recovered faster than my son. She always did. She leaned forward, her voice sharp. "What exactly are you trying to say, Corinne?" I loved how she used my first name. Not mom. Not mother. Just Corinne, like I was some neighbor she barely tolerated. That had started about 2 years into their marriage, right around the time they'd needed help with the down payment on their house. Funny how that worked. "I'm saying," I replied, keeping my tone even, "that the house you've been living in for the past 7 years? The one you love to post about on social media with those beautiful sunset photos from the back deck? I've been paying the rent on it. Every single month." The silence that followed was the kind you could feel in your bones. Heavy. Suffocating. The kind of silence that happens right before something breaks. Aaron's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "That's not. We own that house. We bought it." "Did you?" I asked. "Did you really?" Serena stood up so fast her chair nearly tipped over. "This is ridiculous. Aaron, we're leaving." But Aaron didn't move. He just stared at me with this look I'd never seen before. Part confusion, part fear, and maybe, just maybe, a tiny flicker of recognition. Like somewhere deep down, he'd always known the truth but had been too comfortable in the lie to acknowledge it. "Mom," he started, his voice cracking again. "I don't. When did you? When did I start keeping receipts?" I finished for him. About 10 years ago. Right around the time I realized that love without boundaries is just another word for being used. Serena grabbed her purse from the back of her chair, her face flushed red now. "Come on, Aaron. We don't have to sit here and listen to this." But I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. "You can leave," I said, standing up myself now. "But the truth isn't going anywhere. And neither are the documents I've been saving. Every payment. Every loan I co-signed. Every emergency fund I drained to keep you two afloat. It's all there, documented and dated, sitting in my lockbox right now." Aaron finally found his voice, though it sounded hollow. "Why would you keep all that?" I looked at my son, really looked at him, and for the first time in years, I didn't see the boy I'd raised. I saw a man who'd let his wife disrespect his mother. A man who'd taken and taken and taken without ever once asking what it cost me. A man who'd chosen comfort over character. "Because," I said quietly, somewhere deep down, I knew this day would come. Serena stormed toward the front door, her heels clicking angrily against the floor. Aaron hesitated, looking back at me with something that might have been guilt or might have been anger. It was hard to tell anymore. "This isn't over," Serena called from the hallway. "No," I agreed, my voice carrying just enough to reach her. "It's not." They left. The door slammed. And I stood there in my dining room, surrounded by half-eaten plates of the chicken stew I'd spent all afternoon making, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Power. Not the ugly kind. Not the kind that comes from tearing someone down or getting revenge. But the quiet, solid kind that comes from finally standing up for yourself. From finally saying enough. I cleared the table slowly, scraping plates into the trash, running water over the dishes. My hands were steady. My mind was clear. And somewhere in the back of my thoughts, I was already planning my next move. Because this wasn't just about rent or money or who paid for what. This was about respect. About being seen. About refusing to be erased by the very people you'd given everything to build up. And I had evidence. So much evidence. The question wasn't whether I was going to use it. The question was how. Have you ever reached a breaking point where you had to choose between keeping the peace and standing up for yourself? Drop a comment below and let me know what you would have done in my shoes. And if you want to see what happens next, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because what I discovered in that lockbox was about to change everything. The house felt different after they left. Not empty exactly, but lighter somehow. Like a weight I'd been carrying for so long had finally been set down, and now my shoulders could remember what it felt like to stand up straight. I finished washing the dishes, dried them one by one, and put them back in the cabinet. The same cabinet my late husband had installed 20 years ago, back when this house was filled with laughter instead of tension. Back when family meant something different than it did now. My hands moved on autopilot, wiping down the counters, putting away the leftover stew, folding the dish towels. But my mind was somewhere else entirely. It kept circling back to that rental agreement, the first one I'd ever signed on Aaron's behalf. He'd been 26 then. Fresh out of college with a degree that looked good on paper but didn't translate to actual job offers. His credit was shot from student loans and a credit card he'd maxed out during his senior year. No landlord would touch him. So I'd stepped in. Like I always did. I'd signed the lease, put down the security deposit, and paid the first 3 months' rent while he got on his feet. Those 3 months turned into 6. Then a year. Then it became easier to just keep paying than to have the awkward conversation about when he'd take over. That pattern repeated itself over and over. Different apartments, different excuses, same outcome. Me writing checks, him making promises, nothing ever changing. I walked into the living room and sank into the couch. The cushion still had an indentation from where my granddaughter Maya had curled up last week watching cartoons. She was only 4. Too young to understand the war brewing between her grandmother and her parents. Too innocent to know that the house she called home was built on my bank account. The thought of Maya made my chest tighten. She was the one pure thing in all this mess. The one person who loved me without conditions, without expectations. When she wrapped her tiny arms around my neck and whispered, "I love you, Grandma," it wasn't because I'd paid for something. It was just love. Simple and clean. But Serena was already starting to limit my time with Maya. Fewer visits. More excuses. She's got a play date. We're keeping her on a strict schedule. Maybe next week. I saw what was happening. Serena was building a wall, brick by brick, trying to cut me out of Maya's life the same way she tried to cut me out of everything else. And that scared me more than any insult ever could. The clock on the wall ticked past 10. I should have been tired, but my mind wouldn't shut off. It kept replaying the look on Aaron's face when I mentioned the rent. That shock. That confusion. Like he'd genuinely convinced himself that he'd built his life on his own merit. How does that even happen? How does someone take so much and remember so little? I stood up and walked to the kitchen, to the corner cabinet where I kept my recipe books. My grandmother's handwritten collection, my mother's clipped magazine pages, my own stained and splattered notebooks. Behind them, tucked in a space most people would never think to look, was a small metal lockbox. I pulled it out, set it on the kitchen table, and stared at it for a long moment. The key was on my keyring, right next to my house key and car key. I'd carried it with me every day for years, never really thinking about why. Maybe some part of me always knew I'd need it. I unlocked the box and lifted the lid. Inside were folders, organized by year. Bank statements, cancelled checks, wire transfer confirmations, signed agreements. A decade of my financial life, all of it flowing in one direction. Out. I pulled out the oldest folder and opened it. There, on top, was that first rental agreement. My signature at the bottom, guaranteeing the lease. Aaron's signature right next to mine, promising to repay me within 6 months. He never did. Underneath were the payment receipts. Month after month, withdrawn from my checking account. I ran my finger down the amounts, adding them up in my head. Just that first year alone, I'd paid over $15,000. And that was just the beginning. If you've ever felt invisible after everything you've given, hit that like button. Because what I found in that box was about to turn invisible into undeniable. I kept digging. The second folder had the down payment receipt for their first house. $25,000, written from my savings account. The note Aaron had written me was still attached, promising to pay me back once he got his Christmas bonus that year. The bonus came. The repayment didn't. Third folder. Mortgage payments. Not the down payment this time, but the actual monthly payments. I'd started covering them 3 years ago when Aaron's company had restructured and cut his salary by 30%. He'd asked for help, just until things stabilized. Things never stabilized. But the payments kept coming out of my account, like clockwork. $1,600 a month for 36 months. I did the math. $57,600. My pension. My retirement savings. My security. All of it funneled into a house that Aaron and Serena walked around like they'd earned it through hard work and sacrifice. I found the email Serena had forwarded me by accident last year. She'd been applying for a car loan and needed some financial documents. In her rush, she'd sent me the original mortgage approval letter instead of the one she'd meant to send. Right there, in black and white, was my name listed as the primary guarantor. Not Erin. Not Serena. Me. I'd never mentioned it to them. Never brought it up. I'd just quietly saved the email in a folder marked important, and gone on pretending everything was normal. But nothing was normal. Nothing had been normal for years. I spread the documents across the table, creating a timeline. Every payment lined up with every emergency they'd had. Erin's car breaking down. Serena's medical bills. The new furniture they absolutely needed. The vacation they deserved after such a hard year. Hard for who? My hands started to shake. Not from fear or anger, but from something else. Recognition, maybe. Or relief. Because looking at all this evidence laid out in front of me, I finally understood something I'd been denying for too long. I hadn't been helping my son. I'd been enabling him to forget I existed. Drop a broken heart in the comments if you've ever realized you were being taken for granted by someone you loved. The worst part wasn't the money. Money can be earned back, saved again, rebuilt. The worst part was the erasure. The way they'd rewritten history, casting themselves as the heroes of their own story while I became a footnote they'd rather forget. Every time Serena posted about their beautiful home on social media, she got hundreds of likes. Congratulations on your success. You two worked so hard for this. You deserve everything you have. And I'd sit there, scrolling through the comments, wanting to scream. Wanting to reply with receipts and bank statements and the truth. But I'd stayed quiet. Because that's what good mothers do, right? They stay quiet. They don't embarrass their children. They don't air dirty laundry. But staying quiet had cost me everything. My savings. My dignity. My relationship with my son. And now, potentially, my relationship with my granddaughter. I closed the folders slowly, carefully, and stacked them back in the lockbox. But I didn't lock it. Not yet. Because something had shifted tonight. Some invisible line had been crossed, and there was no going back now. Serena had thrown down the gauntlet with that insult, and Erin had backed her up with his silence. They thought I was just a bitter old woman. Someone to be managed and minimized and eventually forgotten. They had no idea what I was capable of. What would you do with all this evidence? Keep quiet or speak up? Let me know in the comments below. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I'd doze off for 20 minutes, then jerk awake with my mind racing, going over conversations from years ago. Things Erin had said. Promises Serena had made. All of it suddenly taking on new meaning now that I understood the full picture. Around 5 in the morning, I gave up on sleep entirely. I made coffee, strong and black, and sat back down at the kitchen table with that lockbox. The documents stared back at me in the dim pre-dawn light, and I realized something important. This wasn't just about money. It was about truth. And truth, I was learning, needed witnesses. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found her name. Dr. Eliana Brooks. We'd served on the community center board together for 3 years before she retired. She'd been a lawyer for 30 years before that, specializing in family law and estate planning. Sharp as a tack and tough as nails, but with a warmth that made you trust her instantly. We'd stayed friends even after she left the board. Coffee once a month. Phone calls when one of us needed advice. She'd been through her own family drama years ago, something involving her daughter and a custody battle. She'd never told me the full story, but I'd seen the steel in her eyes when she talked about fighting for what mattered. I sent her a text, knowing she was an early riser like me. Eliana, I need your help. Can we talk today? Three dots appeared almost immediately. Then her response. My house. 8 o'clock. Bring whatever you've got. I spent the next 2 hours organizing everything. I created a spreadsheet on my laptop, listing every payment by date and amount. I made copies of the most important documents, the ones that told the clearest story. I even printed out some of Serena's social media posts, the ones where she bragged about their success and independence. By the time I pulled up to Eliana's house at 7:55, I had a folder that could have been used in court. Not that I wanted it to go that far. But I needed to know what my options were. I needed to know if I was crazy for feeling this betrayed, or if the numbers backed up what my gut was screaming. Eliana opened the door before I could knock. She was wearing reading glasses on a chain around her neck and holding a mug of tea. Her gray hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and she wore that expression I remembered from board meetings. The one that said she was already 3 steps ahead of whatever problem you were about to present. Come in, she said, stepping aside. You look like you've been up all night. Close enough, I admitted, following her into her living room. It was exactly what you'd expect from a retired lawyer. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, comfortable furniture, and a massive oak desk in the corner covered with neat stacks of papers. She gestured to the couch. Sit. Tell me everything. So I did. I started with the dinner, with Serena's insult and Aaron's silence. Then I backtracked, explaining years of payments and broken promises and slow erasure. My voice stayed steady at first, clinical almost, just reciting facts. But somewhere around the part where I explained how they'd started limiting my time with Maya, my voice cracked. Eliana didn't interrupt. She just listened, occasionally nodding, her expression growing more serious with each detail I shared. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached for the folder I'd brought. May I? I nodded. She opened it and started going through the documents slowly, methodically. She'd pull out a page, study it, sometimes making small notes on a legal pad she'd grabbed from the desk. Her reading glasses slid down her nose, and she'd push them back up absently, never taking her eyes off the papers. I watched her work, sipping the tea she'd made me, feeling strangely calm. Like I'd finally done something right. Like I'd finally stopped pretending and started facing reality. After what felt like an hour but was probably closer to 20 minutes, Eliana set down the last document and looked at me over her glasses. Corinne, she said, her voice quiet but firm. You've kept everything. I wasn't sure if I should, I admitted. It felt wrong sometimes, like I was keeping score. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to. That feeling saved you, Eliana said bluntly. She tapped the folder. Most people don't do this. They give and give and give, and when it all falls apart, they have nothing but their word against someone else's. But you? You have dates, amounts, signatures, bank records. This isn't just evidence. This is leverage. The word hung in the air between us. Leverage. It sounded harsh. Calculating. Not like something a mother should have against her son. But maybe that was exactly what I needed. What kind of leverage? I asked. Eliana leaned back, crossing her arms. That depends on what you want. Do you want your money back? Do you want acknowledgement? Do you want to protect your relationship with your granddaughter? Do you want to burn it all down and start over? I hadn't thought about it in those terms. I'd been so focused on the hurt, the betrayal, that I hadn't considered what I actually wanted as an outcome. I don't want to hurt Aaron, I said slowly. But I can't keep being erased. And I can't lose Maya. Eliana nodded like she'd expected that answer. Then we need to be strategic. Quiet leverage is the most powerful kind. You don't have to go nuclear. You just have to make it clear that you could. She pulled the mortgage approval letter from the pile, the one with my name as guarantor. This alone, she said, holding it up, changes everything. They don't own that house. Not legally. Not fully. You're tied to it in ways they probably don't even understand. And if they tried to sell it or refinance it without your consent, they'd hit a wall immediately. My stomach flipped. I'd signed that paper 5 years ago, trying to help Erin qualify for a better interest rate. I hadn't thought about the implications. Hadn't realized it meant I was still legally bound to that property. So what do I do? I asked. Eliana smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who'd spent 3 decades outmaneuvering opponents in courtrooms. We file a quiet motion to place a temporary freeze on the property. Nothing dramatic. Nothing public. Just a legal hold until ownership and financial responsibility can be properly clarified. It'll stop them from making any major moves while we figure out the rest. Will that make things worse? I asked. Between me and Erin? Eliana's expression softened. Corinne, things are already worse. You just didn't want to admit it. Now you're choosing to stop letting them take advantage of you. That's not making things worse. That's refusing to let them get any worse than they already are. She was right. I knew she was right. But knowing it and accepting it were 2 different things. There's something else, Eliana said, pulling out another document. It was one of the rental agreements from years ago. You mentioned they're limiting your access to your granddaughter? I nodded, feeling my throat tighten. If they're doing that as retaliation, and if they're living in a property you're financially tied to, that becomes relevant. Grandparents' rights are tricky, but you have more standing than you think. Especially if we can prove you've been a consistent, loving presence in Maya's life and that they're cutting you off for vindictive reasons. Hope flickered in my chest. Small, fragile, but real. I don't want a legal battle over Maya, I said. That would destroy what's left of our family. Then we make sure they know you could file one, Eliana said. Without actually filing. Quiet leverage, remember? The goal isn't to crush them. It's to make them realize they can't crush you. Have you ever had to draw a line with family, even when it hurt? Comment below if you know what that feels like. We spent the next 2 hours building a strategy. Eliana made phone calls to colleagues, pulled up legal precedents, and drafted a preliminary motion. I watched her work, amazed at how quickly she moved from compassion to calculation. This was her element. She wasn't just helping me. She was enjoying the puzzle. By noon, we had a plan. I'll file the freeze motion tomorrow, Eliana said. It'll take about a week to get in front of a judge, but given the documentation you have, I'd say approval is almost certain. Once that happens, they'll receive official notice. That's when things will get interesting. Interesting how? I asked. Eliana's smile returned. They'll realize you're not backing down. And more importantly, they'll realize you have evidence. Real, legal, undeniable evidence. That changes the power dynamic entirely. I left Eliana's house feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Not quite hope, but something close. Maybe it was clarity. Maybe it was resolve. Whatever it was, it felt like armor. I drove home slowly, letting my mind settle. The sky was overcast, threatening rain. My street looked the same as always. Quiet. Suburban. Normal. But nothing felt normal anymore. As I pulled into my driveway, I saw a car parked across the street. Erin's car. He was sitting in the driver's seat, staring at my house like he'd been waiting for me. My heart started pounding. Part of me wanted to drive away, to avoid whatever confrontation was about to happen. But another part, the part that had woken up last night, refused to run. I parked, grabbed my purse and the folder, and walked toward my front door. Aaron got out of his car and called after me. "Mom, wait. We need to talk." I stopped but didn't turn around. "Do we?" "Please," he said, and his voice cracked just like it had at dinner. "I don't understand what's happening." I turned to face him. He looked terrible. Dark circles under his eyes, hair uncombed, wearing the same clothes from yesterday. For a moment, I saw my little boy again. The one who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. The one who'd bring me dandelions and call them flowers. But that little boy was gone. In his place was a man who'd let his wife disrespect his mother and done nothing to stop it. "What don't you understand, Aaron?" I asked, keeping my voice level. He walked closer, stopping a few feet away. "The rent thing. The documents. All of it. I thought we were okay." "You thought we were okay," I repeated. "Did you ever ask if I was okay?" He flinched like I'd slapped him. "Did you ever once stop to think about what it cost me to keep bailing you out? Did you ever wonder why I never asked for the money back? Or did you just assume it was free because I'm your mother?" "I didn't. I never meant." He ran his hand through his hair, frustrated. "You never said anything. You never told me it was a problem." And there it was. The heart of everything. I'd stayed quiet for so long that my silence had become permission. Permission to take, to forget, to erase. "I'm saying something now," I told him. He looked at the folder in my hands. "What's in there?" "The truth," I said simply. His face went pale again, and I knew Eliana had been right. Evidence changed everything. "Mom, please," Aaron said. "Whatever you're planning, can we just talk about it first? As a family." "A family," I repeated, tasting the word. "Is that what we are, Aaron? Because yesterday, your wife made it very clear that I'm not part of hers." "Serena was upset," he said quickly. "She didn't mean it." "Yes," I said quietly. "She did." The first drops of rain started to fall. Aaron stood there, getting wet, looking lost and confused and angry all at once. "What happens now?" he asked. I looked at my son, the boy I'd raised, the man I barely recognized anymore, and told him the only truth I had left. "Now you find out what it costs to take someone for granted." If this story is hitting close to home, don't forget to subscribe. Because what happened next changed everything. The motion was filed on a Tuesday morning. Eliana called me at 10 to let me know it was done, official, submitted to the court. Her voice was crisp, professional, but I could hear the satisfaction underneath. "Now we wait," she said. "They'll receive notice by the end of the week. Could be Thursday, could be Friday. Depends on the courier service." "And then?" I asked, gripping my phone tighter than necessary. "Then they'll call their lawyer. If they have one. Or they'll call you. Or they'll panic and do something stupid. Either way, we'll know where we stand within 48 hours of them getting that notice." I thanked her and hung up, then spent the rest of the day trying to distract myself. I cleaned the house top to bottom. Did laundry that didn't need doing. Organized my spice cabinet by alphabetical order. Anything to keep my hands busy and my mind from spiraling. But every time I paused, the same thought crept in. What if this makes everything worse? What if Aaron never speaks to me again? What if I lose Maya forever? The fear was real. Constant. Like a low hum underneath everything else. But so was the anger. The kind that had been simmering for years and was finally allowed to boil. Wednesday came and went. No call. No text. Nothing. Thursday morning, I was watering my fern by the window when my phone buzzed. A text from Aaron. "Can I come by? Alone. Just me and you." I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to say no. To make him wait the way I'd waited for acknowledgement all these years. But another part, the part that still remembered rocking him to sleep when he was 3, couldn't ignore the request. 1 hour, I texted back. He showed up exactly on time. I watched through the window as he parked, sat in his car for a full minute like he was building up courage, then finally got out and walked to my door. I opened it before he could knock. "Come in." He stepped inside, and immediately I could see he hadn't been sleeping. His eyes were bloodshot, his movements jerky and uncertain. He looked around the living room like he was seeing it for the first time. Or maybe like he was seeing it for the last time. "Coffee?" I offered. He shook his head. "I can't stay long. Serena thinks I'm at the hardware store." Of course she did. Even now, he was sneaking around, lying to his wife to see his mother. We sat in the living room. The same couch where Maya had curled up. The same coffee table where I'd spread out coloring books and crayons during her visits. Aaron perched on the edge of the cushion like he might bolt at any moment. "I talked to a lawyer yesterday," he said quietly. "A guy from my company's legal department. I asked him some hypothetical questions." "Hypothetical," I repeated. He had the decency to look embarrassed. I didn't give him names or details. But I described the situation. The payments, the guarantor thing, all of it. "And what did your hypothetical lawyer say?" Aaron's jaw tightened. "He said I'm screwed. That if you wanted to, you could force a sale of the house. That you're technically part owner because of how the mortgage is structured. That if you pulled your guarantee, the whole thing could collapse." I didn't say anything. Just let him sit with that reality. "Mom," he said, and his voice broke. "That's our home. Maya's home. We can't lose it." "You won't lose it," I said calmly. "As long as I keep paying for it." He flinched. "I didn't know you were still. I thought we'd taken over the payments years ago." "You thought," I said. "You didn't ask. You didn't check. You just assumed." "I know," he whispered. "I know, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Mom. I should have been paying attention. I should have known." The apology hung in the air between us. It sounded sincere. It probably was sincere. But sincerity without change was just noise. "What did Serena say?" I asked. "When you told her about the payments?" Aaron looked down at his hands. "She didn't believe me at first. Thought I was exaggerating. Then I showed her some of the bank statements I found in our file cabinet. Ones with your account number on them. And then..." His hands clenched into fists. "She said you were manipulating the situation. That you'd probably been planning this for years. That you were trying to control us." The words stung, but they didn't surprise me. Serena had built her entire identity around the fiction that she and Aaron were self-made. Admitting the truth would mean admitting she'd been wrong. And people like Serena didn't do that. "I'm not trying to control you," I said quietly. "I'm trying to stop being erased." Aaron looked up, and I saw tears in his eyes. "I never wanted to erase you." "But you did," I said. "Every time you took my money and forgot to say thank you. Every time Serena insulted me and you said nothing. Every time you posted about your success without mentioning who made it possible. You erased me little by little until I was invisible." "I didn't mean to," he said, and now the tears were falling. "I swear, Mom, I didn't mean to." "I know," I said, "and I meant it. But intent doesn't erase impact." We sat in silence for a moment. Outside, a bird landed on the fence, chirped twice, and flew away. "What do you want?" Aaron asked finally. "What would make this right?" It was the first time he'd asked me what I wanted in years. Maybe ever. I want acknowledgement, I said. I want respect. I want to be part of Maya's life without having to beg for permission. And I want you to understand that help isn't the same as ownership, but it's not the same as nothing either. He nodded slowly. What about the house? What about it? The lawyer said there's a motion to freeze the property. That we can't sell it or refinance it until things are resolved. Is that true? So they'd received the notice. Faster than Eliana had expected. It's true, I said. Why? His voice cracked. Why would you do that? Because, I said, keeping my voice steady, I needed you to understand that I'm not powerless. That you can't just push me aside and pretend I don't exist. Aaron wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. So what happens now? Do we go to court? Do we fight over the house? Over Maya? That depends on you, I said. And Serena. She wants to fight, he admitted. She says you don't have a case. That you gave us that money willingly, and we don't owe you anything. She's wrong, I said simply. I have receipts. Signed agreements. Email trails. Bank records going back a decade. And I have a very good lawyer who's very excited to present all of it if necessary. Aaron's face went even paler. You'd really do that? You'd drag us through court? I'd really defend myself, I corrected. I'd really refuse to be bullied and gaslit and erased. If that requires a courtroom, then yes. I'd do it. He stood up abruptly, pacing to the window and back. This is insane. We're family. Families don't sue each other. Families don't treat each other the way Serena treats me, I shot back. Families don't take and never give back. And families definitely don't insult their mother and expect her to keep writing checks. He stopped pacing, his shoulders slumping. I don't know how to fix this. Start by standing up to your wife, I said. Start by telling her that if she can't respect your mother, she can't benefit from your mother's money. Would you stand up to your spouse to defend your parent? Let me know in the comments. Aaron looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time since he'd arrived. She won't like that. I don't care what she likes, I said. I care about what's right. He nodded slowly, but I could see the war happening behind his eyes. The part of him that knew I was right fighting against the part of him that was terrified of rocking the boat with Serena. I need to go, he said finally. I need to think. Think fast, I said. Because Eliana's ready to move forward if we need to. He walked to the door, paused with his hand on the knob. I love you, Mom. I love you too, I said. But love isn't enough anymore. He left without another word. I watched through the window as he got in his car, sat there for a long moment with his head on the steering wheel, then finally drove away. My phone rang almost immediately. Eliana. He came to see you, she said. Not a question. She'd probably told me to expect it. Yes. How did it go? Honestly? I'm not sure. That's okay, Eliana said. The important thing is he came. He's scared. He's desperate. And desperate people make mistakes or they make concessions. Either way, we're in a stronger position than we were this morning. So what's next? We wait for the judge's decision on the freeze. Should come through any day now. And once it does, the real negotiation begins. I thanked her and hung up, then walked to the kitchen and pulled out the lockbox again. I didn't open it this time. Just looked at it. This small metal box that held a decade of my life, reduced to numbers and signatures. But it also held power. The kind of power that comes from truth. From documentation. from refusing to let your story be rewritten by people who benefited from your silence. My phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. This is Serena. We need to talk. My heart started racing. I typed back quickly. Then talk. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally. Not over text. Meet me tomorrow. Coffee shop on Main Street. Noon. I stared at the message, trying to figure out her angle. Was she trying to intimidate me? Threaten me? Or was this a genuine attempt at resolution? I'll be there, I typed back. Her response was immediate. Come alone. No lawyer. I almost laughed. She thought I was the one who needed protection. Fine, I replied. I texted Eliana immediately, telling her about the meeting. Her response was swift. Don't agree to anything. Don't sign anything. Just listen and report back. And Corinne? Record the conversation if you can. Just in case. The next day couldn't come fast enough. Because whatever Serena was planning, I had a feeling it was about to reveal just how desperate they really were. Drop a fire if you can't wait to see what happens next. And make sure you're subscribed because this confrontation is about to get intense. I arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early. Found a table in the back corner where I could see the door but still have some privacy. Ordered a black coffee I didn't really want and pulled out my phone, opening the voice recorder app like Eliana had suggested. I felt ridiculous. Like I was in some spy movie instead of meeting my daughter-in-law for coffee. But Eliana had been firm. Protect yourself, she'd said. Always. At exactly noon, Serena walked in. She was dressed like she was going to a business meeting. Blazer, pressed pants, heels that clicked against the floor. Her hair was pulled back tight, and she wore sunglasses even though it was cloudy outside. She didn't take them off until she sat down across from me. Her eyes were cold. Calculating. Thank you for meeting me, she said, her voice flat. Professional. Like we were negotiating a business deal instead of trying to salvage a family. You asked me to come, I replied. So I'm here. She ordered a latte from the waitress, waited until the woman walked away, then leaned forward. I'm going to be direct, Corinne. This situation has gotten out of hand. Has it? I asked, taking a sip of my coffee. Yes, she said firmly. Aaron's been a mess. He's not sleeping, not eating. He's terrified you're going to destroy everything we've built. Everything you've built, I repeated. That's interesting phrasing. Her jaw tightened. You know what I mean. Actually, I don't. Because from where I'm sitting, I built most of it. She sat back, crossing her arms. You gave us money. We're grateful for that. But that doesn't give you the right to hold it over our heads forever. Grateful, I said, tasting the word. That's funny. Because I don't remember you ever expressing gratitude. In fact, the last thing you expressed was that I'm not even half the woman your mother is. She had the decency to look uncomfortable for half a second. I was angry. People say things when they're angry. And people reveal the truth when they're angry, I countered. The waitress brought Serena's latte. She waited until we were alone again before speaking. Look, she said, stirring her drink. I didn't come here to rehash that dinner. I came here to find a solution. I'm listening. She pulled a folded piece of paper from her purse and slid it across the table. This is a proposal. Aaron and I are willing to sign a repayment agreement. We'll pay you back every dollar you've given us over the years. With interest. But you have to drop the freeze on the house and agree not to pursue any further legal action. I looked at the paper but didn't pick it up. How much do you think you owe me? We estimated around $40,000, she said. I almost laughed. Almost. 40,000. Yes. Maybe 50 if we're being generous. We can do monthly payments. It'll take a few years, but 40,000, I said again, letting the number sit between us like a bad joke. Serena shifted in her seat. Like I said, maybe 50. We can negotiate the exact amount. I picked up the paper now, unfolded it slowly, scanned the typed terms. Monthly payments of $500 for 8 years. A total repayment of $48,000. I set it down carefully, smoothed out the creases, and looked Serena dead in the eye. Try 173,000. The color drained from her face. What? $173,462, I said, my voice steady. That's what I've paid over the last 10 years. I have every receipt, every bank statement, every wire transfer confirmation. Eliana helped me add it up down to the cent. Serena's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. The down payment on your house alone was $25,000, I continued. 36 months of mortgage payments at $1,600 each. That's $57,000 right there. Student loan payments Aaron couldn't cover. Medical bills. Car repairs. Furniture. Vacations. Emergency funds. It all adds up, Serena. And I kept track of every single dollar. She found her voice, but it came out shaky. That's impossible. We couldn't have taken that much. But you did, I said simply. You just didn't keep track because you never planned on paying it back. She grabbed the paper, crumpled it in her fist. You can't prove all of that. Actually, I can, I said. I have a lockbox at home filled with documentation. Bank statements. Cancelled checks. Signed agreements. Email confirmations. There's even that mortgage approval letter you accidentally forwarded me, the one with my name listed as primary guarantor. Remember that? Her face went from pale to red. Anger replacing shock. This is extortion, she hissed. No, I said calmly. Extortion is when you threaten someone to get money you're not owed. I'm just telling you the truth about money I already gave you. There's a difference. She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. Other customers glanced over. She lowered her voice, but the venom was still there. You're doing this to punish me. Because I hurt your feelings at dinner. I'm doing this because you've been erasing me for years, I replied. That dinner was just the moment I decided to stop letting you. Serena grabbed her purse, her hands shaking. Aaron's not going to stand for this. He'll choose me over you. Then he'll choose the person who's been taking from him over the person who's been giving to him, I said. And that'll tell me everything I need to know. She turned to leave, then stopped. Spun back around with something like desperation in her eyes. What about Maya? She asked, her voice breaking. You'd really use your own granddaughter as leverage? That hit deeper than any insult she'd thrown at me. I'm not using Maya as anything, I said quietly. You're the one who started limiting my visits. You're the one building walls. I'm just refusing to be cut out of her life completely. There's a difference. You'll never see her again if you don't drop this, Serena threatened. And there it was. The mask finally off. The truth laid bare. Then I guess we'll see what a judge has to say about that, I replied. She stared at me for a long moment, her chest heaving, then stormed out of the coffee shop without another word. I sat there for a few minutes after she left, my hands wrapped around my now cold coffee. My heart was pounding, but I felt strangely calm. Like I'd just stepped off a ledge and realized I could fly. I stopped the voice recording on my phone and texted Eliana. Meeting done. You're going to want to hear this. Have you ever had someone underestimate you, then watched their face change when they realized their mistake? Drop a comment below. The judge's decision came through on Friday afternoon. Eliana called me the moment she got the notification. "The freeze is approved," she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "Effective immediately. They can't sell, can't refinance, can't make any major decisions about that property without your consent or court approval." I sat down hard on my couch, the weight of it hitting me all at once. It was real now. Legal. Official. How long does it last? I asked. Until we resolve the ownership and financial questions. Could be weeks, could be months. Depends on how reasonable they want to be. Based on my meeting with Serena yesterday, I said, "I'm guessing not very reasonable." "I listened to the recording you sent," Eliana said. "The threat about Maya was a mistake on her part. A big one. Judges don't look kindly on parents who use children as weapons. If this goes to court, that recording becomes very relevant." My stomach twisted. The idea of this ending up in court, of our family drama becoming public record, made me feel sick. But the alternative, letting them erase me and cut me off from Maya, felt worse. What happens next? I asked. They have 2 weeks to respond to the freeze. They can accept it and we negotiate a settlement, or they can contest it and we go to mediation. Either way, they can't ignore it. I thanked her and hung up, then just sat there in the quiet of my living room. The afternoon sun streamed through the window, hitting the framed photo on the side table. It was from Maya's 3rd birthday. She was sitting on my lap, both of us wearing paper crowns, chocolate cake smeared on her face. She looked so happy, so loved. I picked up the photo, traced my finger along her smile. Would she remember these moments when she got older? Or would Serena rewrite history, painting me as the villain who tried to ruin their family? The doorbell rang, yanking me from my thoughts. I looked through the peephole and my heart sank. Aaron. Again. But this time Serena was with him, standing slightly behind him with her arms crossed. I took a breath, steadied myself, and opened the door. "We need to talk," Aaron said. His voice was flat. Exhausted. "Can we come in?" I stepped aside without a word. They walked past me into the living room. Serena sat on the couch like she owned it. Aaron stood by the window, hands shoved in his pockets. Nobody spoke for a long moment. Finally, Aaron broke the silence. "The freeze on the house. You really did it." "I did," I confirmed. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Serena said, her voice sharp. "We were supposed to refinance next month. We could have gotten a better rate, lowered our payments. Now we're stuck." "You're stuck paying a mortgage I've been covering," I corrected. "Seems fair to me." Aaron turned from the window. "Mom, please. Can we figure this out like adults? Without lawyers and courts and all this legal stuff." "I tried that for 10 years, I said. "It didn't work." "Because you never told us there was a problem." Aaron said, his voice rising. "You just kept paying and staying quiet, and now you're acting like we're the bad guys for not reading your mind." "I shouldn't have to tell you that respect matters," I shot back. "I shouldn't have to remind you that your wife insulted me in my own home and you said nothing. I shouldn't have to beg to see my granddaughter." "We never stopped you from seeing Maya," Serena said. "You made it harder every single week," I replied. "Fewer visits. More excuses. You think I didn't notice?" Serena stood up, her face flushed. "Maybe we limited visits because we didn't want Maya exposed to this toxicity, to your bitterness." The words hit like a slap. But I didn't flinch. "Wanting acknowledgement isn't bitterness," I said quietly. "Refusing to be erased isn't toxicity. And keeping receipts isn't a crime." Aaron stepped between us, his hands raised like a referee. Okay, everyone calm down. This isn't helping. Then what would help, Aaron? I asked. What would make you finally stand up and admit the truth? That your mother has been funding your life for a decade and your wife has been treating her like garbage. He flinched, opened his mouth, closed it. Serena grabbed his arm. We're leaving. This is pointless. But Aaron didn't move. He stood there, looking at me with something that might have been recognition finally breaking through. The 173,000, he said quietly. Is that real? Every penny, I confirmed. He closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, they were wet. I didn't know. I swear, Mom, I didn't know it was that much. Because you didn't want to know, I said. Because knowing would've meant owing. And owing would've meant changing. Serena tugged his arm harder. Aaron, let's go. But he pulled free from her grip. No. I need to hear this. She stared at him, shock written across her face. It might have been the first time he'd chosen me over her in years. Your mother has documentation, he said to Serena, his voice shaking. Receipts, bank statements, everything. The lawyer I talked to said she has a legitimate claim. That we could lose the house if she pushes this. She won't push it, Serena said, but her voice had lost its certainty. She's bluffing. Am I? I asked, looking directly at her. Would you like to bet your house on that assumption? The silence that followed was thick enough to cut. Aaron sat down heavily on the arm of the couch. What do you want, Mom? Honestly, what would make this right? It was the second time he'd asked me that question. But this time, Serena was hearing it too. I want acknowledgement, I said. I want a formal agreement that recognizes what I've contributed. I want my relationship with Maya protected, legally, so you can't cut me out on a whim. And I want respect. Real respect, not the fake kind you show when you need something. And the money? Serena asked, her voice small now. We can negotiate repayment, I said. But it has to be real. Not 40,000 when the actual number is 173. And not a promise you'll break the moment this freeze lifts. Aaron looked at Serena. She looked at the floor. We need to talk, he said to her. Alone. She nodded, stood up. They walked to the door together. Aaron paused, looked back at me. I'm sorry, he said. For all of it. For not seeing. For not standing up. For letting it get this bad. Sorry isn't enough, I said. But it's a start. They left. The house went quiet again. I walked back to the couch, picked up Maya's photo, and let myself cry. Not from sadness exactly. More from release. Like pressure I'd been holding for years finally had somewhere to go. My phone buzzed. A text from Eliana. How did it go? I think they're finally scared enough to negotiate, I typed back. Good, she replied. Fear is the beginning of respect. Would you have stood your ground like this, even knowing it might cost you your relationship with your child? Let us know in the comments. 10 days later, I sat in a conference room at Eliana's law office. It was smaller than I'd expected. A long table, 6 chairs, a window overlooking the parking lot. Nothing fancy, but it felt official. Real. Eliana sat beside me, files spread out in front of her. She'd dressed for battle, sharp blazer and reading glasses that made her look like she could argue down a Supreme Court judge. Across from us were 3 empty chairs. We were waiting for Aaron, Serena, and their lawyer. Nervous? Eliana asked. Terrified, I admitted. Good, she said. Means you care about the outcome. Just remember what we practiced. Stay calm. Let me do most of the talking. And don't agree to anything unless I nod first. I nodded, wiping my sweaty palms on my pants. The door opened. Aaron walked in first, wearing a suit I'd never seen before. Probably bought for this meeting. Serena followed, her face a mask of controlled neutrality. And behind them, a man in his 40s with a briefcase and the kind of tired eyes that suggested he'd been through too many family disputes. David Chun, he said, extending his hand to Eliana. I'm representing the Adebayos. Eliana shook his hand. Eliana Brooks. And this is my client, Corinne Adebayo. Everyone sat. The air felt thick with unspoken tension. David opened his briefcase, pulled out a folder. I've reviewed the documentation your office sent over. It's quite extensive. It is, Eliana agreed. My clients acknowledge that Mrs. Adebayo has provided financial support over the years, David continued. However, they contend that this support was given freely, as gifts, with no expectation of repayment. Therefore, they don't believe they have any legal obligation to reimburse her. I felt my jaw clench. Eliana put a hand on my arm, a subtle reminder to stay quiet. That would be a compelling argument, Eliana said, her voice calm, if it weren't contradicted by the signed agreements Mrs. Adebayo has in her possession. Several of these documents explicitly state that the money was a loan to be repaid within specified timeframes. She slid 3 documents across the table. Aaron's face went pale as he recognized them. David reviewed them quickly, his expression shifting. I wasn't aware these existed. Most people don't keep such thorough records, Eliana said. Mrs. Adebayo is not most people. Serena leaned forward. Those agreements are from years ago. We assumed the debt had been forgiven. Assumed, I said, finally speaking. You assumed a lot of things. David held up a hand. Let's stay focused. Mrs. Adebayo, my clients are willing to negotiate a settlement. They propose a repayment plan of $75,000 over 10 years. That's more than the initial estimate and accounts for some of the additional costs you've documented. $75,000. Still less than half of what they actually owed. No, I said firmly. David blinked. I'm sorry. No, I repeated. That's not acceptable. Aaron spoke for the first time since sitting down. Mom, $75,000 is a lot of money. More than we can really afford. We'd have to stretch our budget, cut back on everything. You should have thought about that before taking $173,000 from me, I replied. Serena's mask cracked. We didn't take anything. You gave it to us. And you took it, I said. Without gratitude. Without acknowledgement. Without even basic respect. This isn't just about money, Eliana interjected smoothly. Mrs. Adebayo has additional concerns regarding her relationship with her granddaughter. David nodded. We're prepared to address that as well. My clients agree to regular visitation. 1 weekend per month, plus major holidays. 1 weekend per month, I repeated, my voice hollow. I used to see Maya twice a week. Circumstances have changed, Serena said coldly. Yes, I agreed. They have. You changed them. Eliana pulled out another document. This is a transcript of a conversation between Mrs. Adebayo and Serena Adebayo, recorded 6 days ago at a public coffee shop. In it, Mrs. Serena Adebayo explicitly threatens to cut off all contact between Mrs. Corinne Adebayo and her granddaughter unless Mrs. Adebayo drops her legal claims. She slid the transcript across the table. David read it, his jaw tightening. Aaron's hands curled into fists. Serena's face went bright red. That's out of context, Serena said quickly. Actually, Eliana replied, we have the full audio recording. Context very much included. And I'm quite certain a family court judge would be very interested in hearing it. The room went silent. You could hear the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. David leaned back, pinching the bridge of his nose. "Mr. and Mrs. Adebayo, could I have a moment alone with you?" Eliana nodded. "We'll step outside." We left the conference room. The hallway was quiet except for the distant sound of a copy machine. Eliana checked her phone while I paced, my heart hammering. "That recording," I said. "Was it legal to make?" "Perfectly legal," Eliana assured me. "You were in a public place, and in this state, only one party needs to consent to recording a conversation. That recording is admissible in court if we need it." "Do you think they'll settle now?" She smiled slightly. "If their lawyer's any good, he's in there right now explaining exactly how bad this could get for them. Family court judges don't take kindly to parental alienation. And financial fraud, even within families, has consequences." 10 minutes later, David opened the door and waved us back in. Everyone sat. Aaron wouldn't look at me. Serena stared at the table. David cleared his throat. "My clients are prepared to offer a revised settlement," he said. $125,000, paid over 8 years. Additionally, Mrs. Adebayo will have unrestricted visitation rights with her granddaughter, formalized in writing, enforceable by the court. I looked at Eliana. She studied the proposal, made some notes, then leaned close to whisper in my ear. "It's not everything, but it's significant. And the visitation clause is strong. They're giving ground." I looked across the table at my son. At the daughter-in-law who'd spent years trying to erase me. At the lawyer who was just trying to contain the damage. 150,000, I said. "And the visitation agreement includes my right to be present at school events, birthday parties, and family gatherings. You don't get to freeze me out anymore." David looked at his clients. Aaron closed his eyes. Serena's jaw clenched so hard I thought her teeth might crack. "Fine," Serena said finally, the word forced through gritted teeth. David drafted the terms quickly, both lawyers reviewing every clause. An hour later, we had a formal settlement agreement. Aaron and Serena would pay me $150,000 over 8 years. The house freeze would be lifted once the first payment cleared. And I had legal, enforceable rights to see Maya. When it came time to sign, Aaron's hand shook so badly he could barely write his name. We left the office separately. Eliana walked me to my car, her hand on my shoulder. "You did it," she said. "You stood up for yourself and you won." "I don't feel like I won," I admitted. "I feel like I just lost my son." "You didn't lose him," Eliana said gently. "You just stopped letting him lose you." Have you ever had to choose between being right and keeping the peace? Drop a flexed biceps if you'd make the same choice. The first payment came through 3 weeks later. $1,500 appeared in my bank account with a transaction note that just said settlement payment 1 of 96. No message. No phone call. Just money. Cold and transactional. I stared at the notification on my phone, sitting in my kitchen with my morning coffee. Part of me had expected them to ghost, to pretend the agreement didn't exist. But they'd paid. That meant something. Or maybe it meant nothing except they were scared of what would happen if they didn't. I tried calling Aaron that day. It went straight to voicemail. I left a message, keeping my voice light. "Hi, honey. I saw the payment came through. Thank you. I was hoping we could talk. Maybe I could come by and see Maya? I miss her. Call me back when you get a chance." He didn't call back. I tried again 2 days later. Straight to voicemail again. By the end of the week, I realized he'd blocked my number. The pain of that hit harder than any of Serena's insults. Harder than the fight over money. Because this was my son actively choosing to cut me out. Not just staying silent while someone else did it, but making the choice himself. I called Eliana, my voice breaking. He blocked me. Aaron blocked my number. That violates the settlement agreement, she said immediately. The visitation clause requires them to maintain reasonable communication so you can arrange time with Maya. I don't want to drag him back to court, I said. I just want to talk to my son. Eliana was quiet for a moment. Give him time. He's embarrassed. Ashamed. Men like Aaron don't handle that well. They either face it head-on or they run. Right now, he's running. What if he never stops running? Then you still have legal protections, she said. And you still have your granddaughter. The agreement ensures that. But I didn't want just legal protections. I wanted my family back. The version that had existed before money and resentment had poisoned everything. Except maybe that version had never really existed. Maybe I'd just been too blinded by love to see the dysfunction growing underneath. If someone you loved pushed you away after you stood up for yourself, would you keep reaching out or let them go? Comment below. I started sending letters to Aaron instead. Old-fashioned paper letters, the kind that couldn't be deleted or blocked. I'd write them at my kitchen table late at night, choosing my words carefully. Dear Aaron, I hope you and Serena and Maya are doing well. I'm not writing to fight or to remind you of what happened. I just want you to know that I love you. I'm proud of you. And I'm here whenever you're ready to talk. Love, Mom. I never got responses. But they never came back returned either, so I knew he was getting them. 6 weeks after the settlement, I got a text from an unknown number. This is Serena. Maya's birthday party is next Saturday at 2 p.m. You can come but only for an hour. Don't cause a scene. My hands shook as I typed back. I'll be there. Thank you. No response. But it was something. A crack in the wall. That Saturday, I showed up at their house at exactly 2 o'clock. My car was packed with presents I'd been buying for weeks. A bicycle with training wheels. Art supplies. Books. Stuffed animals. Everything I'd wanted to give her but couldn't because I'd been cut off. I rang the doorbell, my heart pounding. Serena answered. She looked tired. Older somehow, like the stress of everything had aged her overnight. 1 hour, she said coldly. Maya doesn't know anything about what happened. We want to keep it that way. Of course, I said. She stepped aside. I walked into the house that I'd paid for but never felt welcome in. The living room was decorated with balloons and streamers. Kids were running around, hopped up on sugar and excitement. And there, in the center of it all, was Maya. She saw me and her face lit up like the sun breaking through clouds. Grandma. She ran to me, threw her arms around my legs. I knelt down and hugged her tight, breathing in her little kid smell of strawberry shampoo and birthday cake. I missed you so much, sweetheart, I whispered. I missed you too, she said. Mommy said you were busy. I'm not too busy for you, I told her. Never too busy for you. I stayed for my hour. Played games with Maya and her friends. Helped cut the cake. Sang happy birthday. Aaron was there, but he stayed in the other room, never making eye contact. Like I was a ghost haunting his own house. When my time was up, Serena appeared in the doorway, arms crossed. The universal signal for time to go. I knelt down one more time, hugged Maya tight. I love you, baby girl. Love you too, Grandma. I walked to my car with my chest aching. 1 hour. I'd been reduced to 1 hour of my granddaughter's birthday. But it was 1 hour more than I'd had the month before. And according to the settlement agreement, it wouldn't be the last. Drop a red heart if you believe small victories still matter when you're fighting for family. Over the next few months, a pattern emerged. Serena would text me dates and times when I could visit Maya. Always short. Always structured. Always with the underlying threat that if I stepped out of line, the access would disappear. But I showed up every single time. I didn't complain. Didn't push for more. Just took what I was given and made every minute count. Maya didn't understand why our visits were so short now. Why I couldn't just come over whenever anymore. Why Daddy stayed in the other room when I was there. Did you and Daddy have a fight? She asked me once, her big eyes confused. Grown-ups sometimes disagree, I told her carefully. But that doesn't change how much I love you. Or how much Daddy loves you. Does Daddy still love you? She asked. The question hit me like a punch to the gut. I think so, sweetheart. Sometimes love just gets complicated. She accepted that answer the way kids do, moving on to the next topic without dwelling. But I dwelled. I dwelled on it for weeks. Did Aaron still love me? Or had I destroyed that by refusing to stay silent? The payments kept coming. Every month, like clockwork. $1,500 appeared in my account. No messages. No calls. Just money. I started putting it in a separate savings account. I told myself I was saving it for Maya's college fund. That eventually, I'd give it back to her when she was old enough. Turn this whole mess into something good. But really, I just couldn't bring myself to spend it. It felt too much like blood money. Like I'd sacrificed my relationship with my son for a check that came every 30 days. 8 months after the settlement, I got a letter in the mail. Not from Aaron. From his company's HR department. It was a notice that I'd been removed as Aaron's emergency contact. Serena was now listed as the only contact. In case of accident or death, I wouldn't even be notified. That's when I finally broke down. Completely. Sitting at my kitchen table with that letter, I sobbed like I hadn't sobbed since my husband died. Because this was death too, in a way. The death of the relationship I'd had with my son. The death of the family I'd thought we were. The death of the illusion that love could survive everything. I called Eliana, barely able to get the words out through my tears. He removed me as his emergency contact. His own mother. I don't even exist to him anymore. Oh, Corinne, she said, her voice soft. I'm so sorry. Did I do the right thing? I asked. Standing up for myself? Or did I just ruin everything? Eliana was quiet for a long moment. You did the only thing you could do. You refused to be erased. Sometimes that comes with a cost. But the cost of staying silent would have been your sense of self. Your dignity. You would have lost yourself trying to hold onto people who didn't value you. It still hurts, I whispered. Of course it does, she said. That means you're human. That means you still care. And maybe one day, Aaron will care enough to face what he lost. Have you ever wondered if doing the right thing was worth the price? Tell us in the comments. A year after the settlement, something shifted. It was subtle at first. Barely noticeable. Serena's texts became slightly less cold. Not warm exactly, but less hostile. Instead of, you can come for 1 hour, they started saying, Maya would like to see you Saturday if you're available. Small change. But I noticed. Then Aaron started appearing in the same room during my visits. He still didn't talk to me, but he stopped hiding. He'd sit on the other side of the living room, scrolling through his phone, while I played with Maya. Like he was testing the waters. Seeing if being near me would hurt. One Saturday in late summer, Maya fell asleep on my lap while we were reading a story. Her little body went limp, her breathing deep and steady. I looked up and found Aaron watching us from the doorway. Our eyes met for the first time in over a year. He looked different. Thinner. Tired. Like the weight of everything had been grinding him down. "She missed you," he said quietly. His first words to me in 14 months. "I missed her too," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. He moved closer, carefully, like approaching a wounded animal. Sat down on the other end of the couch. "She asks about you," he said. "Why we don't see you more. Why you don't come for dinner anymore." "What do you tell her?" "That grown-up relationships are complicated," he said. "Same thing you told her, apparently." We sat in silence, Maya sleeping between us. The weight of everything unsaid pressing down on the room. "I'm sorry," Aaron said finally. "For blocking your number. For cutting you out. For—" His voice cracked. "For all of it." I wanted to say it was okay. Wanted to make it easy for him. But I couldn't. "Thank you for saying that," I said instead. He nodded, looking down at his hands. "Serena and I have been going to therapy. Marriage counseling. We almost didn't make it." "I didn't know," I said. "Yeah, well." He laughed bitterly. "Turns out having your wife's sense of identity shattered and your mother forcing you to face how much you've taken from her is bad for a marriage. Who knew?" "Aaron." "No, I need to say this," he interrupted. "You were right. About everything. The money, the disrespect, the way we treated you. I've been going over it in my head for months. Every payment you made, every time Serena said something awful and I said nothing. You were right to stand up to us." Tears stung my eyes. I didn't want to be right. I wanted to be seen. "I see you now," he said, his own eyes wet. "I see what you sacrificed. What you gave up so I could have a better life. And I see how we repaid you for it. With silence and entitlement and cruelty." Maya stirred slightly but didn't wake. I stroked her hair gently, buying time to find my voice. "Do you think we can fix this?" I asked. "Can we get back to something like normal?" "I don't know," Aaron admitted. "But I want to try. If you'll let me." I looked at my son. Really looked at him. Not the boy I'd raised or the man who'd disappointed me, but the human being sitting across from me who was trying, finally, to take responsibility. "I'd like that," I said. He wiped his eyes, smiled slightly. "Serena's been working on something. An apology. She's terrified to give it to you." "She should be," I said. "I'm still pretty angry with her." "You have every right to be," Aaron said. "But she's trying. She really is. The therapist has been helping her see how toxic some of her behavior was. How much of her identity was wrapped up in pretending we'd done everything ourselves. And now she's facing reality," Aaron said. "And it's humbling. Painful. But necessary." The door to the kitchen opened. Serena stood there, frozen, clearly having heard at least part of our conversation. She looked at me, then at Aaron, then back at me. "I can come back later," she said quickly. "No," I said. "Stay. Please." She walked in slowly, perched on the arm of the chair across from us. Picked at her fingernails nervously. "I've been writing you a letter," she said finally, not meeting my eyes. "About 50 different versions. I keep throwing them away because nothing sounds right. Nothing captures how badly I messed up." "Maybe just say it," I suggested. "Without the letter." She took a shaky breath. "I'm sorry. For the insult at dinner. For the way I treated you. For trying to cut you out of Maya's life. For taking your money and acting like we'd earned it ourselves. For being so desperate to prove I was successful that I erased the person who actually made it all possible." Her voice broke on the last word. Tears streamed down her face. I was awful to you, she continued. And I don't have an excuse. I was insecure and prideful and so scared of looking weak that I made you invisible. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't rush to accept it. Didn't immediately offer forgiveness. I let her sit with those words, with that discomfort. Let her feel what I'd felt for years. Thank you for saying that, I said finally. It doesn't erase what happened. But it's a start. She nodded, wiping her face. I know I can't fix this overnight. But I want to try. If you'll let me. Maya woke up then, stretching and yawning. She looked around, saw all three of us there, and smiled. Is Daddy staying now? She asked sleepily. When Grandma's here? Yeah, baby, Aaron said, his voice thick. Daddy's staying. Maya's smile got wider. She crawled off my lap and onto Aaron's, then reached out for Serena. The three of them together on one couch, and me on the other. A family. Broken and bruised, but still trying to be whole. Grandma, can you come for dinner? Maya asked, her voice hopeful. Like before. I looked at Aaron. He looked at Serena. She nodded. I'd love to, sweetheart, I said. If your parents say it's okay. It's more than okay, Aaron said. Please stay. So I did. We ordered pizza because nobody had the energy to cook. Sat around the dining table where this whole thing had started over a year ago. Maya chattered about kindergarten, about her friends, about the butterfly she'd seen that morning. Normal kid stuff. Beautiful, boring, normal kid stuff. And for the first time in months, the house felt less like a battlefield and more like a home. If someone who hurt you tried to make amends, would you give them a second chance? Drop your thoughts below. After dinner, after Maya was tucked into bed, the three of us sat in the living room with coffee. The conversation was stilted at first. Awkward. Like none of us knew how to be together anymore, without the armor of anger and resentment. The payments are getting easier, Aaron said. We refinanced some other debt, cut back on expenses. We should be able to pay you back faster than 8 years. There's no rush, I said. The agreement is what it is. Still, Serena said, we want you to know we're taking it seriously. That we understand what we owe you. In money and in so much more. I nodded, sipping my coffee. It was progress. Real, tangible progress. I want Maya to know, I said carefully. When she's older. I want her to understand what happened. Not the ugly details, but the truth. That relationships require respect and that family isn't just about blood. It's about showing up and acknowledging each other. We'll tell her, Aaron promised. When she's ready to understand. We'll tell her about her grandmother who refused to be forgotten. The words settled over us. Not quite healing, but close. Like the beginning of healing. I left that night with something I hadn't had in over a year. Hope. Real hope that we might actually build something better from the rubble of what we'd destroyed. The next morning, I got a text from Serena. Thank you for dinner. Thank you for giving us another chance. I know I don't deserve it. I stared at my phone for a long time before responding. We all deserve a chance to do better. Let's just do better. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. We will. I promise. Have you ever rebuilt a relationship that seemed broken beyond repair? Share your story in the comments. 2 years after that dinner at my table. 2 years after the insult that changed everything. 2 years after I finally stood up for myself. I'm sitting in my living room on a Sunday afternoon. Maya sprawled on the floor doing homework. Well, calling it homework is generous. She's 7 now, and her homework consists of coloring a picture of her family. "Grandma, how do you spell strong?" she asks. "Strong, I tell her. "Why?" She holds up her picture. It's stick figures of her, Erin, Serena, and me. Under my stick figure, she's written, "My grandma is strong." My throat tightens. "That's beautiful, baby." Miss Peterson said we had to write something special about each person, Maya explains. "And I remembered Daddy saying you were the strongest person he knows. So I put it here." I look up. Erin's standing in the doorway of the kitchen, watching. He smiles, a real smile, the kind I hadn't seen in years before all this happened. Things aren't perfect. We're not some fairy tale family that healed overnight. But we're better. We're honest. We show up for each other in ways that matter. Erin and Serena paid off the settlement in 18 months instead of 8 years. They cut back on everything, worked extra hours, sold things they didn't need. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Because they finally understood that owing someone isn't just about money. It's about dignity. When they made the final payment, Erin drove over with an envelope. Inside was a check for the last installment, and a handwritten letter. "Mom, this can never repay what we took from you. Not just the money, but the years of disrespect. The years we made you invisible. But we hope it's a start. We hope it shows you that we finally see you. We finally understand. Thank you for refusing to disappear. Thank you for fighting for yourself when we wouldn't fight for you. We love you. We're sorry. And we'll spend the rest of our lives trying to be worthy of the sacrifices you made for us." I cried reading that letter. Kept it in my lockbox, the same one that held all the evidence I'd collected. A reminder that truth, even painful truth, can lead to healing. Serena and I aren't best friends. We probably never will be. But we're cordial. Respectful. She thanks me now when I help with Maya. Actually says the words "thank you" instead of just expecting it. And sometimes, when she's having a hard day, she calls me. Asks for advice. Listens when I give it. It's a small thing, but it means everything. Last month, on my birthday, they threw me a party. Nothing fancy. Just family and a few friends. But Maya had made me a card that said, "To the best grandma in the world, who taught me that standing up for yourself is important." I'd looked at Serena questioningly. She'd smiled, a bit sad but genuine. "We told her an age-appropriate version of what happened," she explained. "That you and we had a disagreement about respect and money, and that you taught us an important lesson about valuing the people who love us." How did she take it? I'd asked. "She said she wants to be like you when she grows up," Erin said. "Strong and brave and not afraid to tell the truth even when it's hard." That made me cry. Happy tears this time. Now, watching Maya color her picture, I think about everything that happened. The pain, the betrayal, the legal battles, the frozen silence. And I think about what came after. The slow thaw. The difficult conversations. The rebuilding. Was it worth it? Yes. 1,000 times yes. Because I didn't lose myself. I didn't let them erase me. I stood up, I fought back, and I forced them to see me. Really see me. And in doing that, I gave Maya something invaluable. I gave her a grandmother who taught her that love without respect is just another word for being used. That boundaries matter. That documentation matters. That your voice matters. My phone rings. It's Eliana. "Hey stranger," she says. "Haven't heard from you in a while. Everything okay?" "Everything's good," I tell her. "Really good." Erin and Serena behaving themselves? They are. We actually had Sunday brunch today. Became a regular thing. "Look at you," she laughs. "Living your best life. I'm proud of you, you know." What you did took courage. What we did, I correct. I couldn't have done it without you. True, she says, and I can hear her smiling. But you're the one who kept those receipts. You're the one who refused to back down. I just gave you the tools. You did the work. We chat for a few more minutes, then hang up. Maya finishes her picture and brings it to me. Do you like it, Grandma? I love it, I tell her honestly. Can I keep it? Of course. It's for you. She hugs me tight, then runs off to show Erin. I look down at the stick figure version of myself, the words strong written in a 7-year-old's careful letters. That's what this was all about. Not the money. Not the house. Not even the apology, though that mattered too. It was about being seen. About refusing to be a footnote in someone else's success story. About standing up and saying, I matter. My sacrifices matter. My pain matters. And in the end, they heard me. It took a legal fight and frozen bank accounts and a year of silence. But they heard me. The late afternoon sun streams through the window, hitting that photo of Maya on my lap at her 3rd birthday. She's 11 now in the picture I took at her party last week. Same smile. Same love. But now she's old enough to understand that her grandmother isn't just someone who gives her presents and babysits. She's someone who fought to stay in her life. Someone who refused to be erased. I think about all the people out there right now, being taken for granted by their own families. Being used and dismissed and expected to stay silent. All the mothers and fathers and grandparents who give and give and give until there's nothing left. And I hope they hear this story. I hope they understand that you can love someone and still demand respect. That you can be generous without being a doormat. That keeping receipts isn't petty. It's protection. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it comes in the form of a lockbox filled with bank statements and the courage to finally say enough. And sometimes, if you're really lucky, that whisper is loud enough to shake the people you love into finally seeing you. Not as a wallet. Not as a convenience. Not as someone to be managed or minimized. But as a person. With value. With dignity. With a voice that deserves to be heard. Maya runs back in, climbs onto my lap even though she's getting too big for it. I love you, Grandma, she says. I love you too, sweetheart, I reply, holding her close. And I mean it. All of it. The love, the pain, the fight, the healing. Every messy, complicated, beautiful piece of it. Because this is my family. Broken and rebuilt. Imperfect but trying. And finally, seeing me for who I am. That's enough. That's everything. Thank you for watching this story. If it touched you, if it made you think about your own relationships, if it reminded you that standing up for yourself is worth the cost, then please share it. Share it with someone who needs to hear that they matter. That their voice matters. That they don't have to stay silent just to keep the peace. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another story like this one. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from and what this story meant to you. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And remember, you don't have to roar to be heard. Sometimes a whisper, backed by truth and evidence and unwavering courage, is enough to change everything. Until next time, keep standing up for yourself. Keep documenting your truth. Keep refusing to be erased. The world needs more people who understand that love and respect aren't enemies. They're partners. See you in the next story. And thank you truly for being part of this family.